and I collapsed on the trail, and I was alone, and I went out of my body, and that was absolutely amazing. They didn't use hardly any anesthesia at that point because I think they were afraid they would lose me again. They would affect my heart. I remember being very cold. The operating room was very cold. The lights were overwhelmingly bright in my eyes. Light was coming into my being, like through me, in me. It was an explosion of light, different colors of darts of light. And every piece of light that was coming into me was oh, I understand. It was a consciousness. It was an awareness. It was a download of information, colors that I had never seen before, and just all these beautiful, it was like being in a river of souls. The love said to me, will you stay for love? And I still get chills when I hear that question, will you stay for love? Because how can you answer no to such a thing? I had two near-death experiences as a baby, and then one at 23 years old. These affected how my life, the direction of my life, but also I didn't remember these near-death experiences until I was 17 years old. So that occurred because I received a healing prayer from a priest who, it was just a casual prayer. He put his hands on my head and I just had a flood of, it was a re-experiencing. It wasn't just a remembering. I re-experienced those first two near-death experiences, as well as the third experience right during the surgery. They had to do a surgery at five months old because the head had the soft spots in the head had closed. They're called fontanelles. So if you see a baby, they have soft spots. So so the brain can grow. Those closed. So I would have died or been really not functional. And so the second near-death experience happened when they gave me anesthesia and it stopped my heart. And so they didn't proceed with the surgery. Um, the third experience at that age, my experience was being in between. It wasn't near death, but it was definitely out of body and back in body and out of body. I was in between, going back and forth. So when I received this healing prayer from this priest, what happened was it was like an explosion of memory. And people say, how in the world can you remember, such a young age? And I even remember emotions of my mom before I was born. And we say, how can we remember that? The only way I can explain or understand myself how in the world we can remember is that I know that the memory of who we are is not just in the brain, it's in the field of information. Every thought, every emotion, every feeling is in the cloud of our soul. I kind of put it that way. It's not in the body. So when we die, that essence, that memory, that experience, every emotion, every smile, it's all there in the field of our soul. And somehow that prayer, I tapped into that. And it was an explosion of awareness, experience. And so I was born not breathing, but I was aware of being outside my body. It was very peaceful. I felt enveloped by the light. That body was nothing. It felt like just a little shell or the cord had been wrapped around my neck several times, and my mom was in labor for 38 hours, so I was flat as a pancake and blue, and no oxygen. And so they whisked me off into the another room and told my mom that they were sorry, but I didn't live. Well, luckily they kept working on me and I lived. And so I got another chance. And so all I can say about that is I was aware of being out of the body. I was aware when I went back in the body, that little body, it was terrifying feeling because I couldn't breathe. It was really hard to breathe, and they had to do all kinds of procedures. I was 4 pounds and went down to 3 pounds, and then so it was very small. In those days, they didn't have prenatal care like they do today, so it was quite intensive care. And I was put in this little bubble in the back of a room, and my parents never got to touch me for 2 months. I was in the hospital until they finally let me go, and then I had to return for the surgery. But everything was procedural. I was having a hard time breathing because they had tubes and stuff. When I came back, when they attempted to do the surgery the first time, that's when I died again, and I experienced being in out of my body. It was very quick. It was uncomplicated. It was seamless, and I felt like I was held by beings of light, and they were very familiar. I had known them for like all my life, you know. It was nothing unfamiliar. It was just unconditional love and safety. I felt held in the light. That's when the heart stopped from the anesthesia. Now, when I came back, it was a similar feeling of just constriction, small and dense, uh, compared to an expansive feeling of it's just so unlimited the feeling. You feel expansive. And the other thing that I experienced, which is interesting, is I felt like when I came back in my body that my senses were dampened. Like, you know, and when you're in expanded state, you can see 360 degrees. You have an awareness. And so I felt like somebody, when I came back, I felt like somebody put something over my eyes and my ears. And it was just like, I want to see and I want to hear, you know? And so it everything felt damped down, you know, in my awareness. And the third experience at that age, I don't feel like it was a near death, but I do feel like it was an in between out of body. Like I was saying, I was in and out. I am absolutely sure that they didn't use hardly any anesthesia at that point because I think they were afraid they would lose me again. They would affect my heart. So I was in, I remember being very cold. The operating room was very cold. I remember the smell of, you know, I don't know what the smell is, more like an antiseptic smell. The lights were overwhelmingly bright in my eyes. Nowadays, they put things over people's eyes, and, you know, they didn't. I saw the brightness of the lights. It was terrifying. And I remember shaking because it was so cold. And they had me pinned down, and they were doing this surgery, you know, and they're having to be precise. But I remember people talking, you know, all this around me, and it was terrifying, really, to and then I'd be whisked off, and then I'd be in the light, and I would be safe, and the light, that light was all encompassing. It was just safe. And so kept going back and forth in between. That's what I kind of call it. So that really affected my whole life, even though I wasn't conscious of those experiences and nobody ever told me. They said, you know, all I knew I was born early, and but I nobody ever told me, you know, this. I remembered this at the age 17 when I had this prayer. And I remember telling my mother afterwards the feelings she was feeling. You know, she had feelings of shame because my parents weren't married when I was conceived, and at that time it's a big deal, and so they hurried up and got married. But then I was born 2 months early, so the secret kind of was broken, you know, because I felt her shame, I felt her fear. Yeah, there was a lot of emotion that I could feel from my grandparents even and my dad, and a lot of fear and anxiety that I was feeling. And I told my mom this afterwards, this memory, this re-experiencing, and I explained everything what I was feeling. She just burst into tears because she had held that for a long time. That affected me as a child. I was very sensitive to light, to hearing, and I had I have to say, it felt like all my life until I reached 23, I had a sense of like something missing, homesick, and also like if you've ever lost, if you lost a loved one, it feels like your heart hurts. I felt like my heart hurt for years. It just like where did that go? And so that caused a lot of seeking in me. And when people, say, I love you, it's like, well, that's not love that I understood love to be unconditional. And here it's very conditional. People put conditions on their love. And so I was like, that's not love that I know, as a kid. And so it was challenging. I had my senses were wide open. I could feel emotions of people and didn't know what to do with that. It was ups and downs. My dad was quite up and down. So I was super sensitive to emotions, to sound, to all kinds of sensitivities to light and to hearing. I loved the quiet. I would hang out in the quiet spaces, get in my closet because it was, quiet there. And I like to hang out, in the tree. I like to climb the tree and just be up there and feel the wind on my face. I kept seeking that space again. I didn't realize until, much later in my life that what I was seeking was always within me. And that's why I'm sharing this story at this time. Maybe it'll save people time to know that you don't need a near-death experience to to experience what's within you. And it truly is the kingdom of God is within you. Love is within you. We are love. We are that which we're seeking. And so maybe it'll save people time. I really don't think you need a near-death experience to sink into that awareness. It's not outside of us. And so many of us are seeking, for myself included, for many years. I was seeking it outside of myself, and I didn't realize. I spent over 13 years in religious communities thinking that one thing I was attracted to the religious life because it, it fostered a common vision and community. So we could, be of service and healing. And I did work on with the homeless. I did work with battered women. I loved the community and the common vision, but I really never found the place where I could fit that and I love the quiet, but I never found the place that I could fit what I had experienced. It was the box was too small and the religion was too small. It was so much more that I experienced. And so I couldn't fit it in the box of religion. And so I finally gave that vision up and that hope up 13 years later when I was doing a protest in Milwaukee, and we were doing a nonviolent protest, and I was getting arrested purposely because I was protesting U.S. involvement in Central America. And one of the religious sisters was getting arrested next to me, and she was resisting arrest. And I looked in her face and I saw so much anger, and I realized it had nothing to do with what she was being arrested for. I didn't see any peace in her heart. I saw anger. And that caused me to look deep within myself and say, what is not peaceful within you? What is not peaceful? You're trying to get peace in the world when go inside and what is not in peace within you? That caused some really deep reflection. I ended up packing up my car and moving 2,000 miles back to California to work on my relationship with my father, which I had a lot of not peace with him and disharmony in that relationship. And so I attempted to work on that, and it was a disaster. We were not successful at that time, and we're successful now, I just have to say. But uh, what I realized by not being successful at that was I needed to go deeper and work on myself. That peace, love comes from the inside out, not the outside in. And so many of us are trying to be validated by our parents, by our friends, by our coworkers, and that we're okay. And it's just like, no, you have to find that deep within your own heart. You have to find the love. Love comes from the inside out, not the outside in. So I spent the next 10 years. I became a psychotherapist. I worked on my emotional woundedness from generations. You know, we inherit stories and generations, patterns of behavior that we're not even conscious of. And I found that it was easy bypass religious life because I could bypass those feelings and emotions by going spiritual. And so I had to get really honest and work on the pain of those patterns and integrate the spirituality with the emotional self. So you can't bypass the woundedness, you know. You can't come to forgiveness just because, you know, your spiritual self says, okay, we're going to forgive. It's a organic, you feel, you know, you need to go through the emotional part of the work. So I have to say that just because I've had near-death experiences doesn't mean my life has been, you know, magic and easy. It's like it's actually brought me to a depth, caused me to reflect and go deeper. And that doesn't mean it's been easier. We've all got stuff, we've all got our emotions, we've all got our pain. Nobody comes into this world without, you know, experiencing the contrast, the pain and the suffering. It's part of the experience. And I do believe at this point that it offers a depth to our love. You know, when we reflect on the most painful parts of our life, most often we can say, it brought me to an awareness that I wouldn't have had otherwise. It brought me to a place of love that I wouldn't have otherwise. And it's not always easy to move into our, can I forgive this? Can I love this? Sometimes it's like, no, I can't. I'm pissed off, you know. It's like, so we grow into our yes, yes, I can forgive this. That
Mhm.
takes time and that takes honesty, that takes going within and sitting with the pain sometimes.
How about the near death experience you had in your 20s?
That one occurred when I was hiking in the mountains in 23 at 23 years age. I loved nature. I still do. And I was very idealistic at the time, and I was fasting for over a week. I wasn't drinking water, and, you know, I was imitating people, you know, that fasted and prayed, and that's what I was doing. And I overdid it, and I collapsed on the trail, and I was alone, and I went out of my body, and that was absolutely an amazing experience. I experienced going towards the light. It was a tunnel but the tunnel had no boundaries. It felt like if I would have touched into the edge, there would be no edge. It was like there was no boundaries, edges to it. It was an expansive, but what was drawing me like a tunnel was that light, all-encompassing light of love, unconditional love. And as I was going towards the light, I was aware of many infinite number of beings of light moving towards this light. And every being that I was aware of seemed to have a different vibration or color. It seemed like you know, and colors that I had never seen before, and just all these beautiful, it was like being in a river of souls, moving towards that love. And then all of a sudden, I was aware of my grandfather standing in front of me, and I said, "Papa," you know, he was like, "Wow." And I just filled with love when he turned around, and it was just like this blending. And I've said in many times in interviews is that it's very much more than telepathic. It was soul to soul communication where you're blending together, and it's just this love. And I love my grandfather, but there was things that I didn't even, you know of him, and he was a very quiet man. And but when we blended together, there was only love. It was just love. It was just, it's so hard to put into words because this can't be put into words. And what I found most beautiful about these experiences, there are no words, and words are really primitive things, these grunts and sounds that, we've, try to get a communication across because our true communication is soul to soul communication where there's no misunderstanding. And I do believe that at some point we're going to begin to communicate clearly with, on this plane. And when that happens, it's going to be a much different place because there won't be the misunderstandings. You'll know another's heart. You'll feel another's heart. And you'll also know when you offend another, you're offending yourself. When you hurt another, you're hurting yourself. There is only one. And so we're just different aspects of the one. And so different faces of God expressing in the experience. And so that was an amazing experience. I asked my grandfather, uh, you know, because I was reading about Jesus at the time. I wanted to know what he was really like because I felt like a lot of the stories didn't accurately portray him, and I wondered what the true story was. And when I said that, immediately I was blending and I was looking into the face of Jesus. It was such an overwhelming sense of love, indescribable, really indescribable. Uh, and I just started going in. It was ecstasy on top of ecstasy. It was a blending and a knowing. I wish I could put it into words to share with people. I was downloaded with the essence of him, feeling him. I don't want to say too much because I don't like to offend people. There's people's walk is their walk. I have a brother that's a conservative Christian, and I have nothing against religions. For me, they're too small of a box, but everybody has their own way. And but I understood that he meant for us to walk side by side and that we are all the incarnation of God. We are all the death and resurrection in this life. And that's the beauty. I mean, it's amazing that we do rise again out of our suffering, that there is no such thing as death. And we're part of that. He just showed us how it's done, in a perfectly beautiful way. But we're meant to walk side by side and uh, be the authentic aspect of that light, which is the same one I am. People sometimes come at me saying, "Oh yeah, you're gonna, they quote Bible scriptures at me. Oh, you don't have to do that because I have a degree in theology, so I know where you're coming from. I actually have a bachelor's degree in theology, so uh, you don't need to save my soul. My soul belongs to God. Clearly, I know who I am, and I know who you are. And I know that we can get lost in our program, we can get lost in our story, and that's okay because we're here for the contrast. So it's okay wherever you're at. If you're in, whatever walk, all paths lead home. All paths lead back to the essence of who we really are. And we say, what an amazing experience that was. And we've designed it this way, in a sense, for the contrast, to offer a depth of love that wouldn't be possible otherwise without this human being experience. So what
Yes.
happened was I was going into that light of Jesus. I was in that love of Jesus. I was taken by a light being to the side, like, okay, come over here. So I was being drawn into the light. And a beautiful being of light. And I can't say female or male because there was not. It was just a beautiful being. Now, at this point in my life, I do believe that being of light was me. It was my soul saying, come over here. And then I started asking questions, like with my words. I would ask a question, and as soon as I said something with my words, I would get the answer. And then the questions started happening faster and faster and faster. And I didn't have to put it with my words. I could just think it, and then I had the answer. And then then all of a sudden it was like an explosion of light, and light was coming into my being, like through me, in me. It was an explosion of light, different colors of darts of light. And every piece of light that was coming into me it was, oh, I understand. It was a consciousness. It was an awareness. It was a download of information. It's taken a lifetime to sort through and to inhabit that here. There's still stuff that I don't remember from that, but there's a lot that I do. Then I was drawn out of that by the sound of a horse. Nobody asked me. I didn't have a life review. Nobody asked me if I wanted to come back. It was just all of a sudden I heard the sound of a horse and I felt the breath of the horse in my ear going, and it was just like, it brought me back into my body. And it was terrible. It was like dense, an expanded state of consciousness there. It's like it's unlimited spaciousness, high vibration. And then you like, scoop, it was like being sucked into a container that had restriction, and it was heavy and dense like molasses. And I was like, oh my gosh, I would never want to do that again, just because it was such a contrast. And it was like, oh, and then if you want, I want to stop here for a question, but if you want, I can tell you a little bit about what happened after that. I had a spiritual experience when I almost committed suicide after that.
So, what happened?
So my brother had been in a car accident, and as a child, I had precognitive abilities where I would see when people were going to pass. And I never thought this was a gift. I just, because there's nothing I could do. I could feel people when they were getting ready to pass. I could pass somebody in a grocery store and feel their light getting ready to pass. I had it with friends and family, and in this case, I knew that my brother was going to pass. And I've told that story many times, so I don't know if I want to retell that story again today, but it was quite an event. He was in a car accident, but I had known for months before he passed that this he was going away. I didn't know how, but I knew he was going to leave us. I went into such a depression, and that's the other thing I had as a child, is I had childhood depression from when I can remember. I had depression all my life until this event at 23. I was in my college dorm, and I was on the floor and I was just depressed. I was feeling like this is too hard. It's hard to be a human being, and I don't want to do it anymore. And I had a bottle of pills and I was ready to end this. And I said, "No, I don't want to do this anymore." And what I heard was the presence that's always been with me say, "I love you." And I said, "Leave me alone. Leave me alone. Go away." And I've always been aware of the presence of love around me, light beings around me, and I never felt alone in my life. But in that instant, when I said, "Leave me alone," I went into the void. And that is beyond words. All I can say is it's a state of no thing, nothing. It was completely black, if I can describe it, but it even is not that. It's just nothing. I realized in that moment, no, I want to be part of creation. I want to create. As a divine being, I want to be in the messiness of all of it. I want to create. I want to, you know what ice cream tastes like, or chocolate tastes like, or a kiss, or, a loss. I want to be in the mess. And so as soon as I made that intention, I was back. I was on the floor. I was sobbing because it was the first time that I ever made a really conscious choice that I wanted to be here. I wanted to be, and I wanted to be a part of creation, and it's that aspect of I am that says, let's create something. Let's create life. The stillness, the love, the void is amazing, but it's the place of potential, and it does exist. It's like the black hole does exist, and it's a part of the Everything arises out of the void, out of love. It's the fabric of all that is, never was, and never will be. I found myself in what I heard when I was back. The voice, the love said to me, "Will you stay for love?" And I still get chills when I hear that question, "Will you stay for love?" Because how can you answer no to such a thing? So I'm here for love. I'm here to experience life and to create with life and all the messiness of life and all the loveliness of life. And I love it. I love being here now. I also am not attached to it. I know that we're not just this. This is an aspect of the divine expression of love. There is much, much more. I'm fully present here now with this experience. And when it ends, I'll be fully present with, what comes. But I know that this life does not end. Our life does not end. The physical story, yes, it does. We'll lose everything we ever have in this life. This is a temporary experience. We'll lose everything we've loved. We'll lose everything we've created. It's temporary.
What would you say to people who are afraid of losing everything they have and everything they are here on Earth?
Yeah, fear of losing everything we've worked for, everything we've invested our love into. Um, just know that this is a temporary experience. This is not when we actually consider that every moment we're dying and being reborn, every moment our cells are dying and being reborn, there, if you look at the patterns of just your body, cells are dying every moment and being reborn. And uh, a state of cancer is when the cell decides it forgets that it's supposed to die. So that dying and reborn, being reborn is life. So to grasp on something is quite a natural state to make it stay the same as it ever was. If it's just like I mean it's a uh, kind of a big example, but having there is a disorder with men who and they have an erection and it doesn't go away. I mean, a good thing in small, for a short time, it's wonderful, but if it never goes away, it's very much a problem. I mean, you can get too much of a good thing, so things need to. Life is dynamic. It's not still. You can't hang on. It's not moving. It is very dynamic. It's moving. It's spiraling. Um, and evolving and that's the joy of it. If it was always the same and never changed, that would be a kind of a dull creation. And so we will lose this, but in the essence we look at what we've actually experienced, and it's not loss. It's and that feeling of loss, but we've actually lost nothing.
What's the biggest lesson you learned so far in this lifetime?
I guess I would start by saying that, that what I've always sought for many years, what I sought was always here. We're an aspect of the consciousness. You don't have to go anywhere because there's nowhere to go. We're here now. We are love. We are that which we seek. And I guess that would be the biggest lesson because I was a seeker. I'm no longer seeking anything. Uh, I'm just expressing and being in the moment with what is. And I'm not going to tell anybody I'm an enlightened being. Please don't. That's not what I'm saying. But I have so much peace right now in my life, and I've had for many years now, because I don't have that angst of where is it? Where did it go? Where'd that love go? I know where love is. It's within me. And I attempt to the best of my ability. To express that in the work that I do and the relationships that I have. But I'm not perfect and nobody is. And so I want to say we're pointing in a direction, like the Zen practice when you say that the teacher is pointing at the moon and the students are looking at the finger. It's like, no, he's pointing at the moon. So don't look so much at the person like me. Look we're pointing to. We're pointing to is that love is within you. There's no difference between the essence of you and the essence of me. And
Mhm.
what we're experiencing in our life, if we're not in a happy, I don't know if we're a peaceful place, I'd rather say than happy, peaceful. Um, if we're feeling not in that place, well, look at what in you is resisting or grasping at. So usually when you look closely at what you're reaching for or what you're grasping at, you that's where the information is. That's the opportunity. That's where you can soften that, breathe into that. Oh, okay, and create space. You're at point of consciousness having these experiences.
Thank you very much, Tammy. How can people find more about you?
My website is healingwellness.com. And you can just type in my name, Tammy Lee Anderson, and that will come up. And then I also have a book that I put out in August. And some people say, oh, you just talked because of the book. Well, in a sense, yes. I am not a public person, and I've never wanted to do, you know, big talks. I love working one-on-one with people. And that's what I do. Right now in my life, everything is coalesced to mentoring and healing. I do healing sessions with people online, and then I do mediumship. And that's developed over the last, since 2018, I started that. And that's been actually really amazing because I get to be with people and confirm that life continues, that their loved ones are still continuing and they will see them again. So that's part of what I do. So I offer three connections there. But why I'm sharing my story at this time, I think it's helpful. I shared it once in 2023 was the first time I started even sharing my story, and so many people responded that it helped them understand things that they had been thinking about. So I kept sharing, and then people said, well, you need to write a book. And I was like, well, I don't need to write a book. The world doesn't need another book. There's lots of books. And what I experienced can't be put into a word. Well, they kept asking. And so I wrote a book. And I wrote it in such a way that it's almost like written like poetry, but it's not poetry, but it's written in a way that it does invite people into their own story, their own reflection. So it's written very beautiful. I'm getting lovely feedback from it, and I love to hear what think about it and how it's there's 30 different stories within the book. It is my journey, but it's also your journey, and as it's written. And then at the end of each story, there's a reflection, invitation to pause. So there's questions like, how does this arise in your life? And so this is the book that I wrote called Into Love. And the forward is by Suzanne Kiesman. I don't know if you know her, but she's an amazing lady. And so in that way, if you read that, some of those stories, you'll have the essence of what I'm talking about right in your hands, so you won't even need to make an appointment with me.
Hmm.
So,
Yeah.
but I am here if people decide, and I love, I love, I love what I'm doing, and so that's another question that comes up for people. What's my purpose? And I said, it doesn't matter what you do. It's who you are in the doing. You know, it can be sweeping floors or whatever you're doing. If you do it with joy, if you do it with excitement and the sense of awe and wonder like a child, uh, that essence comes through, and you do it. Just do it. Just be it.